The champagne glass shattered on marble. Silence fell across the ballroom like a heavy curtain. Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore had just slapped me across the face in front of 500 guests. Blood trickled from my split lip onto my cream-colored dress. She called my father a fraud, a nobody, a man who didn't deserve to breathe the same air as her family. But she didn't know three things: who I really was, what I had been planning for 6 months, and how this single moment of cruelty was about to cost her absolutely everything. I'm Sophia, and what I'm about to tell you sounds impossible, but every single word is true. One slap, one moment of violence, and a billionaire's empire burned to ashes in less than an hour. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's about justice that was 10 years in the making. Stay with me until the very end, because the final twist will leave you absolutely speechless. Hit that subscribe button right now because you won't want to miss what happens next. Let me take you back to where this really began, not the night of the gala, but 10 years earlier. I was 16 years old when my Uncle Peter killed himself. He didn't leave a note, but he didn't need to. Everyone knew why. Eleanor Whitmore had destroyed him systematically, deliberately, and without an ounce of mercy. Peter wasn't actually my uncle by blood. He was my father's best friend, his business partner, his brother in every way that mattered. They had built a small tech company together, developing revolutionary software that could have changed the industry. But Eleanor Whitmore wanted that technology. She offered to buy them out for a fraction of what it was worth, and when they refused, she declared war. She bribed patent officials to reject their applications while approving her own stolen versions. She paid off their investors to pull out at the last minute. She planted false stories in the media about Peter's mental instability and my father's incompetence. Within 18 months, their company was bankrupt. Peter lost everything: his home, his savings, his reputation. My father barely survived, taking a job as a junior engineer just to feed our family. I remember the day we found Peter. I remember my father's screams. I remember holding my mother as she sobbed. And I remember the rage that settled into my bones like concrete, cold, hard, and permanent. Eleanor Whitmore never faced consequences. She added their technology to her empire, made billions from it, and never looked back. She destroyed so many people over the years that she probably didn't even remember Peter's name. But we remembered. My father rebuilt himself over the next 10 years, brick by brick. He took that junior engineering position and worked 18-hour days. He saved every penny. He studied, learned, and developed new technology in secret, better than anything Eleanor had stolen. He built Hayes Technologies from nothing, and this time he did it smart. He stayed under the radar, avoided attention, and made sure Eleanor Whitmore never knew he was the same Gerald Hayes she'd destroyed a decade ago. And me? I studied engineering and business. I became the lead developer on my father's revolutionary AI system, technology that would make everything Eleanor owned look like ancient history. We built something beautiful, something powerful, and we waited for exactly the right moment to strike. That moment came 6 months ago when Whitmore Industries started showing cracks. Their outdated systems were bleeding money, their competitors were catching up, and they needed cutting-edge AI integration to survive. They needed us. When Eleanor's CFO reached out about a potential partnership, my father and I looked at each other across the dinner table and smiled. It was time. We crafted the plan carefully. Hayes Technologies would offer Whitmore Industries a $1 billion partnership deal that seemed too good to refuse. We'd dangle it in front of Eleanor like a lifeline. But the real goal wasn't the deal. It was to get Eleanor to show her true nature in the most public way possible. We needed witnesses. We needed evidence. We needed her to destroy herself. The Crimson Charity Gala was perfect. 500 of the wealthiest, most influential people in the country would be there, including journalists, federal investigators, and even Eleanor's own estranged son, Philip, who had contacted us months ago. Philip hated his mother for what she'd become. He wanted out of the family, and he wanted to make things right. He'd been secretly providing us with recordings of Eleanor's crimes for years. Bribery, fraud, industrial espionage. Everything we needed to bury her. My father was supposed to attend the gala, but we decided I should go instead. A young woman, inexperienced, nervous, easy to intimidate. That's what Eleanor would see. That's what would make her comfortable enough to reveal who she really was. My father would stay home, watching everything through a hidden camera I'd be wearing. The camera was built into my mother's pearl earring, so small, so innocent-looking that no one would ever suspect it. I chose my outfit carefully that night. A simple cream-colored dress, no designer labels, no flashy jewelry, just those pearl earrings and a modest clutch purse. I wanted to look exactly like what Eleanor would despise, humble, ordinary, beneath her notice. When I looked in the mirror before leaving, my father put his hands on my shoulders and said, "Your uncle would be so proud of you." I kissed his cheek and promised I'd make this right. The Grandview Hotel ballroom was everything you'd expect from old money trying to prove it still mattered. Crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than most people's houses, ice sculptures of swans, champagne flowing like water, women in gowns that cost 5 figures, men in custom tuxedos, everyone dripping with diamonds and arrogance. I walked in with my small clutch purse and felt the eyes land on me immediately, assessing, judging, dismissing. A woman in a ruby-red gown looked me up and down and whispered to her companion, loud enough for me to hear, "How quaint. Did she borrow that dress from her grandmother?" They both laughed. A man asked if I was working the event, assuming I was staff. I smiled politely, my heart pounding, and kept moving through the crowd. Every insult, every dismissive glance was being recorded. Every moment was feeding into our plan. I spotted Eleanor Whitmore across the room, and my breath caught. She was exactly as I remembered from the photos I'd studied obsessively, tall, imposing, with silver hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful. She wore a gown that probably cost $50,000, and she moved through the crowd like a queen inspecting her subjects. People practically bowed when she passed. She radiated power and cruelty in equal measure. I approached her carefully, respectfully, and introduced myself. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm Sophia Hayes. I'm here representing my father, Gerald Hayes of Hayes Technologies. We're honored to finalize our partnership tonight." Her face changed instantly. The polite mask dropped, replaced by something cold and predatory. "Where is your father? Did he send his child to do business?" Her voice dripped with contempt. I explained that my father had fallen ill and couldn't attend, that I was fully authorized to finalize the agreement, that I had the contracts ready for her signature, but Eleanor wasn't listening. She was looking me up and down with undisguised disgust, taking in my simple dress, my modest jewelry, my lack of designer labels. In her world, appearance was everything, and I had failed the test. "You show up to negotiate a billion-dollar deal looking like you're attending a church picnic?" She laughed loudly, drawing attention from nearby guests. People turned to watch. Phones were already appearing, capturing this moment. Perfect. I maintained my composure, kept my voice steady. "Mrs. Whitmore, I assure you the terms of our partnership are excellent. Hayes Technologies has developed AI systems that could revolutionize your operations and save your company millions in—" "Save my company?" She cut me off, her voice rising. "My family built an empire while your father was crawling in the dirt. We don't need saving from nobodies who got lucky playing with computers." I felt the familiar anger rising in my chest, but I pushed it down. Not yet. I needed her to go further. "My father has worked incredibly hard to build Hayes Technologies. He's earned everything he has through dedication and innovation. I hoped we could—" "Earned?" Eleanor's laugh was sharp and cruel. "Let me tell you something about your father, little girl. Men like him don't earn anything. They steal, they copy, they ride on the coattails of their betters. Old money doesn't mix with new poverty, and that's all you are, poor people pretending to be players." The words hit exactly as she intended them to. Around us, guests had stopped their conversations entirely. The ballroom had grown quieter, everyone sensing the confrontation building. I could see Eleanor's business partners watching, her investors frowning, her son Philip standing near the bar with his phone out, recording everything. I took a breath and played my role perfectly. "Mrs. Whitmore, please. My father respects you greatly. This partnership would benefit both our companies. If you could just look at the terms. I don't want to look at anything from your father. She stepped closer to me, her height making her tower over me intimidatingly. Do you want to know what I think? I think Gerald Hayes is a fraud who stumbled onto one good idea and has been desperately trying to stay relevant ever since. I think he sent his daughter here because he knew I'd take pity on a young girl out of her depth. Well, I don't do pity. She grabbed my clutch purse from my hands before I could react. The movement was so sudden, so violent that I gasped. Eleanor opened the purse and dumped its contents onto the marble floor. The fake contracts scattered across the polished surface. My phone slid several feet away. Lipstick rolled under a nearby table. And there, among the scattered items, was the real document, the lawsuit we'd prepared, waiting for exactly the right moment. But Eleanor didn't look at the papers. She was too focused on humiliating me. "Look at you," she said, her voice projecting across the silent ballroom. "On your knees like a beggar, scrambling for scraps. That's where people like you belong." I was on my knees, gathering the scattered items, and I let tears form in my eyes. Not tears of shame, tears of anticipation. Because Eleanor had just crossed the line from cruelty into physical aggression, and everything was being recorded in crystal-clear high definition. I stood slowly, clutching the papers and my phone. I looked Eleanor directly in the eyes and said, quiet enough that she had to lean in to hear me, "My uncle would have forgiven you. I won't." Her face changed. The color drained from her cheeks. Her eyes widened with a recognition that came 10 years too late. You're Peter's niece? You remember him." It wasn't a question. "After all the lives you've destroyed, you actually remember his name." Eleanor's hand came up so fast I barely saw it. The slap connected with my cheek with enough force to snap my head to the side. Pain exploded across my face. I tasted blood immediately. My lip had split against my teeth. Blood dripped onto my cream-colored dress, spreading like a wine stain across the fabric. The ballroom was completely silent. A champagne glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered on the floor, the only sound in that frozen moment. Security guards started moving toward us. Eleanor was breathing hard, her face flushed with rage and something else. Fear. She'd just assaulted someone in front of 500 witnesses, and she was beginning to realize what that meant. But I smiled. Blood on my teeth, pain radiating through my jaw, and I smiled at her. "Thank you," I said clearly, making sure everyone could hear. "That's exactly what I needed." I pulled out my phone, and with a few quick swipes, I connected to the ballroom's sound system. I'd hacked into it earlier that evening, a simple exploit that the hotel's outdated security never detected. Eleanor's voice suddenly boomed through the speakers, filling every corner of that massive space. "Your father is nothing. You are nothing. We don't do business with frauds. Poor people pretending to be players." Every cruel word she'd spoken in the last 10 minutes played back in her own voice, crystal clear, undeniable. Guests pulled out their phones, recording the recording. This moment was being captured from dozens of angles, already being uploaded to social media, already going viral. But I wasn't done. Not even close. The recording shifted to older audio, and Eleanor's face went from red to white. Because what came through those speakers next was her voice from 3 years ago, speaking to a senator, "I don't care what it costs. Kill the investigation, and I'll have $5 million in your offshore account by Friday." Then her voice from 5 years ago, talking to one of her executives, "Steal the patents. If anyone asks questions, we'll bury them in legal fees until they give up." And finally, the recording that made several people in the crowd gasp audibly. Eleanor's voice, laughing, from 10 years ago. "Peter Hayes actually killed himself? Well, that saves us the trouble of finishing him off professionally. Weak men always take the easy way out." The ballroom erupted, not in shouts or screams, but in a collective intake of breath, a wave of shock and disgust that rippled through 500 people at once. Eleanor spun around, looking for an exit, looking for her security, looking for any way out of this nightmare. but people were blocking her path, phones out, recording everything, bearing witness to her complete destruction. That's when Philip Whitmore stepped forward. Eleanor's own son, the one she'd ignored and belittled his entire life, walked up to stand beside me. "Mother," he said loudly, clearly, "I gave Sophia those recordings, all of them, and tomorrow morning I'm testifying against you to the federal investigators." Eleanor looked at her son like she'd never seen him before. "Philip, you wouldn't." "I already have," he said. "I've been working with the authorities for 6 months. Everything you've done, every crime, every bribe, every stolen patent, it's all documented. It's all evidence now." A man in a dark suit emerged from the crowd. He looked completely ordinary, forgettable, the kind of person you wouldn't glance at twice. But when he spoke, Eleanor's knees actually buckled. "Eleanor Whitmore, I'm Special Agent Christopher Matthews with the FBI. We've been investigating you for 18 months. You should know that this entire evening has been monitored as part of our ongoing investigation." Eleanor grabbed for a nearby table to steady herself. Her carefully applied makeup was starting to run as sweat beaded on her forehead. "This is entrapment. This is illegal. You can't—" "We can," Agent Matthews said calmly, "and we have enough evidence to prosecute you for fraud, bribery, industrial espionage, and several other federal crimes. You'll be hearing from us very soon." But I still had one more bomb to drop. I bent down and picked up the document that had fallen from my purse, the real document, the one that mattered. I held it up so Eleanor could see it clearly. "This isn't a partnership contract, Eleanor. It's a lawsuit. Hayes Technologies is suing Whitmore Industries for $2 billion in damages, patent theft, industrial espionage, wrongful death. We have 10 years of evidence, dozens of witnesses, and your own son's testimony. You didn't just slap me tonight. You slapped away the last chance you had to save your company." Eleanor lunged at me, hands reaching for my throat, and that's when her own security guards grabbed her. They held her back while she screamed, her carefully constructed facade of elegance and power completely shattered. She looked insane, hair coming loose from its tight arrangement, makeup smeared, eyes wild with panic and rage. I pulled up my phone again and showed her the screen. "See this? This isn't a private recording. Everything that's happened here tonight has been live-streamed to 50,000 people. They watched you slap me. They heard your confessions, and right now they're watching your company's stock price collapse in real time." I turned the phone so everyone could see. Whitmore Industries' stock had dropped 67% in 15 minutes. The numbers were still falling, ticking down like a countdown to doomsday. Around the ballroom, Eleanor's investors were getting emergency calls. 3 of them pushed through the crowd toward her, their faces furious. "Eleanor, the board just held an emergency vote," one of them said. "You're out. Effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building." Her CFO, a man who had worked for the Whitmore family for 20 years, wouldn't even look at her. "The company is finished, Eleanor. By Monday, we'll be filing for bankruptcy protection. You've destroyed everything your family built." I pressed one more button on my phone, and every screen in the ballroom, the decorative displays, the monitors showing the charity auction results, they all switched to the same headline: "Hayes Technologies announces historic partnership with Sterling Industries, Crawford Corp., and Bennett Enterprises." Eleanor stared at the screens, comprehension slowly dawning. You already had other partners?" "We signed the deals yesterday," I confirmed. "We never needed you, Eleanor. This was never about business. This was about making sure you finally faced consequences for what you did to my uncle, to my father, to all the people you destroyed because you thought your money made you untouchable." The federal agents moved in with handcuffs. Eleanor Whitmore, billionaire, society queen, the woman who had ruled this city's elite for 3 decades, was arrested in front of 500 guests. Cameras flashed from every direction. Video was being recorded from dozens of angles. This moment would be on every news channel by morning, trending on every social media platform, dissected and analyzed and shared millions of times. As the agents led Eleanor toward the exit, she looked back at me one last time. The hatred in her eyes was almost physical, but underneath it, I saw something else. Fear. She finally understood that she had lost everything: her company, her fortune, her freedom, her legacy. I stood in the center of that ballroom, blood still on my chin, my cream dress stained, my cheeks swelling from the slap, and I felt nothing but peace. 10 years of planning, 6 months of careful execution, 1 night of perfect justice. The crowd parted as I walked toward the exit, but this time it wasn't dismissal or contempt in their eyes. It was respect. Someone started clapping, slow and deliberate, and others joined until the sound filled the ballroom. A young entrepreneur approached me and asked for my business card. 2 investors wanted to discuss potential partnerships. A journalist requested an exclusive interview. Outside the hotel, I called my father. He answered before the first ring finished. "I watched everything," he said, and I could hear tears in his voice. "Sophia, your uncle would be so proud." "This was never about the money, Dad." "I know," he said softly. "It was about making sure Peter's memory meant something. It was about proving that cruel people don't win forever." I looked back at the hotel, at the chaos visible through the tall windows, at the security guards keeping reporters away from Eleanor as they loaded her into a federal vehicle. "It's done," I said. "It's finally done." The next 6 months unfolded like dominoes falling in sequence. Eleanor Whitmore was formally charged with 17 federal crimes. Her trial lasted 8 weeks and became the most watched court proceedings in years. Philip testified against her, providing evidence of decades of corporate crimes. Other victims came forward, people Eleanor had destroyed over the years, people who had been too afraid to speak up when she had power. She was convicted on 14 of the 17 charges and sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. No bail, no house arrest, no special treatment for being wealthy. Just prison, the same as anyone else who had committed the same crimes. Whitmore Industries collapsed completely. The bankruptcy proceedings took months, with assets sold off to pay creditors and lawsuit settlements. The company that had stood for 80 years, that had been built by Eleanor's grandparents and carried through 3 generations, was dissolved and erased from existence. Hayes Technologies, meanwhile, exploded in value. Our partnerships with Sterling, Crawford, and Bennett made our AI technology the industry standard. Our stock price increased by 200% in the first month alone. Investors who had once ignored my father's calls were now begging for meetings. Tech magazines put us on their covers. My father was named Innovator of the Year by 3 different publications. But the most satisfying part came 8 months after that night at the Gala. Hayes Technologies had enough capital to make a special purchase at the Whitmore Industries asset auction. We bought Eleanor's corporate headquarters building, the gleaming tower in downtown where she'd ruled her empire for 30 years. We paid exactly $1 for it. The building was worth $30 million, but it was so tainted by scandal that no one else would bid. We took it off the market for a single dollar and announced our plans immediately. We weren't going to use it as office space. We were converting it into a free technology training center for underprivileged youth, a place where kids from poor families could learn engineering, coding, and business skills without paying tuition, a place where talent mattered more than money, and we named it the Peter Hayes Center for Technology and Innovation. Eleanor would spend her prison sentence knowing that her beloved headquarters, the symbol of her power and success, had become a place of hope and opportunity for exactly the kind of people she'd spent her life looking down on. Her legacy wasn't dominance and wealth. It was a reminder that cruelty always costs everything in the end. I visited the center on opening day. I wore the same cream-colored dress I'd worn to the gala, cleaned and repaired. I wore my mother's pearl earrings, and I stood in front of 200 students from underprivileged backgrounds and told them my story, all of it, the destruction of my uncle, the years of planning, the night of the gala, the slap that changed everything. Eleanor Whitmore thought money made her better than everyone else, I told them. She thought cruelty was a form of strength. She thought people like you and me were beneath her notice. But she was wrong about everything. Your worth isn't determined by your bank account or your last name. It's determined by your character, your integrity, and your willingness to stand up for what's right. After the speech, a young girl approached me. She couldn't have been more than 14, with worn sneakers and a backpack held together with duct tape. She looked at me with wide, hopeful eyes and said, "Did that really happen? Did you really take down a billionaire?" I knelt down so we were eye level. I did. And someday, when someone tells you that you're not good enough or that you don't belong, I want you to remember this. Dignity isn't something that can be bought, borrowed, or given. It's something you carry inside yourself. And no one, no matter how rich or powerful, can ever take it away from you unless you let them. She hugged me, and I felt tears sting my eyes. The good kind this time. My father officially retired 6 months after the center opened. He'd accomplished what he set out to do. He'd rebuilt his life, honored his best friend's memory, and brought justice to a woman who had thought herself above consequences. He spent his retirement volunteering at the center, teaching engineering classes to students who reminded him of himself at their age. As for me, I became CEO of Hayes Technologies at 27 years old. Some people said I was too young, too inexperienced. Let them talk. I'd taken down a billionaire at 26. I could handle running a company. I keep that cream-colored dress in my office framed behind glass. Next to it, the pearl earrings that held the camera that recorded everything. And on my desk, a photo of my Uncle Peter, smiling from back when he still had hope and dreams and a future. Eleanor Whitmore thought one slap would put me in my place. Instead, it cost her everything: her company, her fortune, her freedom, and any chance of a legacy worth remembering. But this story isn't really about her. It's about every person who's been underestimated, humiliated, or told they're not good enough because of where they come from or how much money they have. 10 years of planning, 6 months of careful execution, one slap that changed everything, and justice that will last forever. If this story gave you chills, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on those notifications, because I have more stories of justice and revenge that will blow your mind. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever stood up to someone who thought they were untouchable? I read every single comment, and I want to hear your stories. Remember this: cruel people always think they're invincible. They think their money, their power, or their position protects them from consequences. But eventually, always, they discover the truth. Dignity and integrity aren't for sale. Justice might be slow, but it's inevitable. And sometimes it arrives in a cream-colored dress with blood on the fabric and a smile that says, "I won." See you in the next story.